All right, welcome to NFL Outdated Cover 2 series. This episode is on the Cleveland Browns, and I am joined with Cantly A. Elliott, the
Yes, sir.
creator, creator of Blaze Review Inc. How's it going?
It's going. Just trying to stay busy, stay out the way, consume as much football as I can, and thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've been wanting to, get someone on to talk about the Browns for a while. It's an exciting time to be a Browns fan, and then it kind of has turned interesting.
Have.
Let's just kind of get right into that. The injuries. That's kind of hit the team quite a bit this year already.
Yeah, it has actually. I feel like this might sound weird, but I feel like we hit our injuries at a good time because I feel like our schedule coming up is getting a little tougher because we have Pittsburgh this week and then Cincinnati actually, who they've been a surprise team this year. So to have it against Denver, play them, get that out the way. Guys can rest a little bit, get healthy, come back these next couple of weeks. Because then we get the Ravens. I think after sooner or later they're back to back. We have them a bye and then them again. So I kind of like where the injuries hit this year. I know, like I said, that sounds weird, but I'm sure to get everybody back. Like I said, Baker Mayfield. This sounds weird too. I was actually happy without him. I thought Case Keenum. I thought he was very solid. I thought the offense was very open, like with him out there. I didn't think he was trying to force too much. So, like you said, it's a weird time to be a Browns fan, but I'll take the wins where we can get them.
Well, yeah, and the Browns, they're been a team for me that I'm good with rooting for.
Yeah.
I'm a Chicago sports fan, but I
Okay.
like to see different teams. And the Browns have had a lot of heartache, in the past, with different things, and it, it's good to see different teams, especially with kind of the history
Yeah.
of the team leaving, and then how long have you kind of followed the Browns?
So I'll be real with you. When I first started paying attention to football, I was actually a Denver Broncos fan because my Pee
Yeah.
Wee football team, we were called the Broncos. Rod Smith and Champ Bailey were some of the first players I really liked. Jake
Oh yeah.
Plummer. Then I was a Bengals fan actually for a little bit. Chad Johnson, he's probably my favorite player all time. But
Oh yeah.
in 10, 11 years ago, my dad converted me to a Browns fan. So I'd say the first probably 8 years was heartbreak. So I kind of felt what people felt for a long time, but it was very short lived for me. So yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, you definitely share that with your dad. I mean, it's interesting. I have kids, and living here in Wisconsin, especially my son, my 11-year-old son is everything against me. So, but I wouldn't have it anything. I wouldn't have it any different. Here living in Wisconsin, being a Bears fan, and now how how did you first with him, like what were some of the players with the Browns that kind of stood out to you when you first became a fan?
I think Charlie Fry was actually the quarterback.
Oh wow, yeah.
Muhammad Massaquoi was still on the team, but I think Braylon Edwards was actually the guy I really liked for some reason. I don't know why. I remember having a Braylon Edwards jersey. So just I think him being my favorite player. And I think I went to a couple of Browns games, Brown Bengals games. And just like being there and seeing like the dog pound and stuff. And like, even though the team wasn't good, because this was around like November, we go November, December, and like you would still see the people like coming in there, like cheering for him. So you kind of saw like how deep like the fandom like goes there. So it's actually I was kind of attracted to that because Bengals fans kind of seem like they bail on the Bengals a little more than Browns fans do. And I don't know if it's just because Cleveland has more football history than Cincinnati, but yeah, it's just the way the fan base I think kind of always no matter what 0-16, 1-15. This is as they say every year, like this is our year. So I just stuck with it.
Well, and that must have been sacrilegious at the time, Braylon Edwards being a Michigan guy in
Yeah.
Ohio.
Yep. Yeah. I actually didn't know he was a Michigan guy until I got a little bit older, and I was like, oh shoot, well, I still like you. So
Right, right.
yeah.
Well, speaking of player that hopefully the fan base likes, what about Baker Mayfield? Like he's coming off of injury. Is he going to be the guy for the franchise, and he's got his contract coming up too? Like are they going to extend him?
Yeah, I think this is a very interesting point because I know it's been talked about for a while, but realistically, I feel like after the way he's played this year, I'm gonna say no. I think I kind of feel like with Baker, he's average. He's just better than the guys the Browns have had for like the last 20 years. I think that's really all it is. I don't think he's anything like super spectacular. I think he'll be a guy who's good enough to win us maybe, 10 to 12 games every year. But like as far as taking that next step, like I don't really know if he's the guy. And I know people might think that's questionable or whatever, but I think he's like an average, like solid type player. I don't think he's going to be the one to like get us over the hump. I know there's been a lot of names thrown out there. Like somebody even mentioned going to get Cam Newton um, as a free agent because you look at Cam Newton last year in New England, who he still actually did really well, but he didn't even have like that many people around him. So I'm like, if you put Cam Newton in a situation like Cleveland with like OBJ, Jarvis, the run game they have, he could be a guy who I think could be pretty solid. But as far as like Baker goes, I'm not crazy sold on him. I feel like he's kind of like declines every year. I don't know. I've never really been like that high on him.
It's kind of a tough place to be. I mean, as a Bears fan, I know this for a while. You're just good enough, but to maybe get in the playoffs, but not be bad enough to get up there to get a top tier quarterback.
Yeah.
So if they went to get Cam Newton, I mean, are there any chances that they could maybe get someone in the draft or?
That's what I was wondering too. But you know what? I feel like I don't want to say since Baker's draft, but I don't know how many good like quarterbacks are like really are out there now. I know CJ Stroud's a guy who he's kind of raised his stock. I feel like Bryce Young, the guy at Ole Miss, I'm not sure what his name is. I know he's up there for the Heisman.
Mhm.
There's been a lot of names that have been thrown out there, and I feel like one of the things that kind of hurts Baker is the fact that he was in the draft classes like Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson. So like you're looking at these guys and how they're getting in the playoffs, like making championship games, winning MVPs, and then you have Baker who was number one. So like I I don't know if he's bad or if they're just like that good, like with that class, but I'd be curious to see like who's out there, like as far as the draft goes. Because like I said, I feel like since that class of 2018, there hasn't been a lot of crazy ones. I know people were high on last year's, but like I don't know. You just kind of see how the guys are panning out in the NFL from last year's draft, and I don't know if they are who we thought they would be, or if it's still too early to tell. I do like Justin Fields though for your Bears. I know like he's kind of had his ups and downs or whatever, but I like Justin. I've always been a huge Justin fan. So
I agree, and a lot of it can be with coaching too.
yeah,
Justin Fields and is not in the best situation,
nope.
but it seems like Baker he's a good match for Stefanski, isn't he?
I feel like he is. Yeah, I just have always kind of felt like there's a lot of other things that kind of I don't want to say like overshadow like how bad he is because like I said, obviously having like Jarvis, you get great receivers. I think Nick Chubb is, in my opinion, I feel like he's the best back in the league. I mean, you have the best running back duo in the league, so I feel like those things kind of like overshadow it. I'd be curious to see if Baker like in a different situation, like how good, would he be worse than he already is? Like, would he be better? I don't know. It's like weird to say, but I on your note with Stefanski, I am glad though that he does have like some coaching stability now. So maybe next year or third year with him, if he's there, like that might be the year everything pops, clicks. Like who knows?
Yeah, and you had brought up, Jarvis Landry. That definitely helps to have, some good receivers. Sometimes the receivers can make the quarterback do well also. So is Odell Beckham still elite? And what is the future of Jarvis Landry there?
So it's funny. Me and one of my friends I do a podcast with, we always say the worst thing that could have happened to OBJ was him have that catch against the Cowboys because I feel like his expectations, like ever since then, it's been like, oh my god, like he's a top five receiver. But you just look at the times Baker does try to get him the ball, and even like Case Keenum was trying to get him the ball last week, and Case Keenum wasn't even forcing it to him. He's like dropping passes on like 4th and 1 and stuff, and I'm like, OBJ, like this is on you, man. I'm not gonna pin that on Baker. So to say OBJ is elite, I feel like there's a lot of guys coming in and a lot of guys who have like really like come up the last couple of years to still call OBJ elite. Like I don't even know if I'd call him a top 15, 20 receiver right now. It's tough.
Really?
Guys are getting better.
Well, yeah. I mean, you got some other receivers there. Is it like Peoples Jones is
Donovan Jones, yeah. They drafted Schwartz out of Auburn. He's like one of the fastest receivers in the league. You look at like Higgins. I mean, Kareem Hunt can catch out the backfield. So I just feel like there's a lot of ways they can hurt you. And I don't know if OBJ is still one of them.
and it what is his contract like? Is he still kind of with the team for another couple years or?
I think so, but I think at the end of this year they're gonna have to start paying people. So I don't know if like he's in for a payday like after this year. I even saw some people talking about the draft deadline or the trade deadline being this Tuesday. Like, are there any possible moves Cleveland can make between now and then with him? So yeah, I don't know. I feel like that OBJ situation is so weird because we were waiting for him to come back to see how him and Baker meshed because Baker really started to heat up towards the end of last season. Then Baker kind of like took a step back to start this season. OBJ, it's just so many weird things I feel like about that relationship.
Yeah, I mean, he's got the name,
Yeah,
recognition and everything, and he's had the talent. So it's interesting, to see. I don't know if it's like maybe injury or what it is.
yeah, I know because the ACL really like I actually tore my ACL myself, and I feel like once I mean obviously the recovery is a pretty long one, it's about 9 months to a year,
Mhm.
but then there's also like that mental aspect of it too because like mine was almost three or 4 years ago, and I still at times am like, oh shoot, like if I come down on this wrong or whatever. So I don't know if it's like a mental thing with OBJ or what the deal is.
That's a really good observation. Yeah, I mean, um, you know, every day Joe Schmo, you and I, but then you have someone, an elite athlete, expected to kind of come back, and we don't really think about that.
Yeah, it's tough. It's definitely messes with your head.
So speaking of, another group that is elite, it's got to be the best in the league between Chubb and Hunt.
Yeah.
What makes that pairing so good? We can talk about that, and then also the addition of Dearness Johnson's come on, and then I really like Demetric Felton as well.
Yeah, Felton's not actually bad either. So for Chubb and Hunt, realistically, um, I didn't know Kareem Hunt was going to be this when we got him. Like I knew he was really good, like from his time with Kansas City, but I mean, like I said before, I think the way he catches out the backfield, I think he can really throw defenses off. I feel like him and Aaron Jones are kind of the same in that way. The way they're able to, create space, like being as fast as they are. And then Chubb, I mean, he realistically like this dude for them to split carries and them to be as productive as they are. That's why Chubb was always like my pick for best back in the league because I'm like for you to split carries and you're still almost racking up 100 yards a game and you're doing it on like 5, 6 less carries than guys like Derrick Henry and stuff. I mean, there's just really no words for their running back duo. I mean, they could be very special. I think they could be generational if they keep up at this rate. Because I mean, they're doing things every week. You think, man, like I've seen this before, but then they go do something else. It's like they're special for sure. And like you said, Dearness Johnson too, him stepping up against the Broncos last week. I know the Broncos aren't like they don't have a crazy good defense, but still to do that prime time, like your first pro start, I mean, we'll take it.
Yeah, and you talk about with Chubb and Hunt. I mean, it's interesting. Nationally, out sometimes you hear that Hunt's the better back, and
It,
so I mean,
yeah, I mean, I would think I would agree. I mean, if anybody ever said that to me that Chubb was a better or Hunt was a better back, I wouldn't argue it because even with Chubb being out, I mean Hunt he's still going crazy. So yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because I've heard that several times before, so it's good to hear it again.
and they're both signed long term, aren't they?
Yeah, they are actually. Yep.
Yeah, I saw that. I'm like, wow. Yeah, I mean, you usually don't see. I mean, a lot of times you'll see a team invest, long term in one running back, and
Right.
then it doesn't work. With Todd Gurley and things like that.
Yeah.
He just kind of fell off a cliff really quickly too. But to have two running backs that are at the top of their game, I mean, that's huge.
Yeah, it's actually kind of funny that you brought up Todd Gurley because I was actually talking to I think some people at work not too long ago, and it's so funny to think maybe like 3, 4 years ago we had like Ezekiel Elliott, Todd Gurley, Christian McCaffrey, Saquon Barkley, like all of the discussion for like the best backs, and like now I don't know if I put any of them really like in that discussion. It's just so weird to see how quick like the running backs change. Because quarterback, I feel like for the longest time kind of stayed the same,
Mhm.
but running back just changes like so often. It's really crazy.
Well, yeah, you talked about all those guys, and they're big in name, but it does make a difference when they've had injuries, and then they start to linger and have other injuries and things like that.
Yeah,
And yeah, I would agree.
crazy.
Now, with obviously the success of the running backs, how much of that is on the offensive line as well?
The offensive line has been crazy. I love the fact that like probably 3-4 years ago we had one of the worst offensive lines. We had no protection for our quarterback, but I mean, like I said, things have drastically changed now. I feel like now you have a top three offensive line in football, and I will say too, I think you can even say the same for Cincinnati because you look at the way Joe Burrow, like for the longest time, he didn't have any protection, but you get the offensive line healthy now. I think they might have drafted another one somewhere this past year, but you look at how Joe Burrow's playing now too. I think that might just be the difference between Burrow and Baker Mayfield. But yeah, the offensive line, like the way the Browns have like re-upped it, shows me just how important it's. Like, man, like that's what was holding us back for all these years. Like that was one part of it. So yeah, I'm loving the offensive line, and they're all young too. The majority of them are young too, so it's like we'll probably have them for a while. I'm cool with it.
Yeah, I mean, you've got like a core, like even you kind of looking at the tight ends as well. I mean, Austin Hooper's there for a while now too.
Yeah, Austin Hooper. I was glad actually when we got him. He's been really solid too. Yeah, since last year. I mean, he blocks really well. He can catch. I mean, he just kind of does it all. I love Austin Hooper.
And I don't know if it's been a resurgence, but you've seen a little bit more of David Njoku. I mean, he was supposed to be the guy for a while, and what are you seeing in him?
Yeah, I'm kind of, I think towards the end of last year, David Njoku, he was like, I don't want to be here, like whatever. Like there was like people talking about that, and then I think he might have said something. So just the fact now that I think they're in this environment now where they're starting to win some games and come together as a team. And I'll think about it as I don't really think Austin Hooper is like a threat to David Njoku, and I think David Njoku is kind of starting to see that.
Oh,
And like I said, with them just playing team ball, playing their role really well. Njoku, he's been big in a lot of games. That game against the Chargers, he did really well. So I'm happy that both the tight ends, like I said, they're both going out there doing their things.
talk about that a little bit. You said he's not a threat. Like, is Njoku kind of the top tight end there, or Austin Hooper? Or
I kind of feel like I would probably say Njoku would probably be the top tight end. I think Austin Hooper, like I said, I think he's kind of more like a blocking type. But Njoku, I mean, like I said, he's had his ups and downs, but for the most part, I would take him on my team. I think he, like I said, him just the way that he opens things up for our offense, I think he's really good at that. So, like I said, I hope both of them just kind of play their roles, do what they're there to do, and just keep winning games with them.
yeah, and does Baker kind of favor one or the other? Or
I kind of feel like he favored David Njoku. I don't know if it's because like they might have a year longer they're together, they've been through more, but I kind of feel like he does favor David Njoku a little bit more.
yeah. Well, let's kind of move on to a part of the team that I know well as a Bears fan that I tried to turn that game off pretty quickly. The Browns defense,
Uh,
talk about some of their key players and how many more sacks versus the Bears are going to get this year, even though they
um,
don't play again.
I know it's that was quite the game. I felt bad for Justin that his first
Mhm.
NFL start was against this defense. I saw people trying to like bash Justin, and I'm like,
Mm-mm.
any of us who have to start our first NFL game against that defense, like I don't think any of us would go out there and
Mm-mm.
wow the world or anything.
Well, especially with that line in front of him as well. Yep.
Yeah, yeah, the line too as well. But no, actually, I love the defense. I just would hope that at some point in time, like everybody's healthy all at once, because it almost seems like when Greg Newsome, Denzel Ward, and all these guys are out there playing, like Clowney or Garrett is hurt, and then like vice versa. So I think the day that they can kind of get everybody together and like string some games together, I think that's when they're really going to start clicking. I think they're scary now, but like you said, they're all young. Get some time together. I think they could arguably be up there with like the Rams, maybe as like for the best defense in the league. I don't know. It's tough.
Yeah, and I mean, what's the? I mean, they talk about the with Miles Garrett and Jadeveon Clowney, but what about the secondary? I mean, with Ward and Newsom, I mean that's a pretty solid group too, right?
Yeah, it is actually, and I will be real. I can never say the guy's name, but he's a linebacker they drafted out of Notre Dame, the rookie. He's been really solid too. I can never
Is
remember how
that
to say.
Taki? No, not that. No,
I
no,
can.
that one's out of BYU. Sione Taki? No.
Yeah, so Taki. Yeah, it's
Yep.
BYU.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, like I said, I think their secondary. I think health has really just been like the biggest thing for their defense, and once they get it together, like you said, play some games together, keep it rolling. Because I think their defense, they haven't had many takeaways this year. So like I said, I guess get some takeaways, really get some momentum. I think they'll be solid.
Were you surprised that they beat the Broncos without Baker?
Um, Not really, because the Broncos were one of those teams, kind of like the Panthers, where like they got out to a hot start, but they weren't really playing a lot of good teams. I think they played like the Jags, the Jets, and somebody else. Um, I think all three of the teams they beat at first were teams who like they were they were under five. It was like some crazy stat, but yeah. So I wasn't like crazy surprised. And plus, we've seen what Case Keenum can do before in the past. Like I said, he's a guy who's good enough to win you some games. So I thought that was one of the ones that he could come across win for us. But if it was like the Ravens or somebody else, I mean, I don't know how much I trust Case Keenum. I think he'd be solid, but I felt like that game against the Broncos was ideal for him.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we talked about kind of the coaching situation, and I'm sure you've been through a few coaches, through 3 years.
Yeah.
What's the difference between Stefanski and some of the past coaches that the Browns have had?
So I'll be real with you. Actually, I did an interview with Hugh Jackson not too long ago, and like talking to him, I feel like he's like really passive about a lot of stuff. We've talked about 2 or 3 times, and I feel like he just kind of got to the point with the Browns where it was like, oh, like I just know we're not good. And even like being around Cincinnati football, where like they've kind of had their ups and downs too. I think having that losing mentality. But the Vikings for a few years, I mean, they were solid in the playoffs. They had a lot of good teams. So I don't know if it's just Stefanski's coming from like a winning type of situation where like he's just kind of like, hey, like, I've won games, like let's take it a step further and compete for a championship. So I kind of always felt like that was the difference with Kevin Stefanski, coming from a winning situation as opposed to like Hugh Jackson, who was kind of like, oh, well, because he was even a coach for the Raiders, who and the Raiders weren't that good. And it's like, because like one of my friends to do the podcast with, he was a defensive, he did something with the defense like while my friend was there. And it's just like, they weren't good then. So I feel like the background you come from definitely makes a difference.
Well, yeah, and then they went to Freddie Kitchens. That was kind of an interesting.
That was definitely an interesting. We had Freddie. I forgot about Freddie. My God, jeez.
I wonder if that was just kind of a opposite of Hugh, and just that's just interesting.
Yeah, it was, and I forgot all about him. Thank you for bringing him up. Jeez.
Well, I as a Bears fan, I know about interesting coaching, interesting quarterbacks, and you've, I mean, going back, I mean, had some interesting quarterbacks and some, just it's good to have a good, a quarterback and a coach, that are on the same page, right?
Absolutely, it is. That's why I felt like Freddie Kitchens, because I mean, when he was the OC, I think that's why him and Baker were so well, because it was like Freddie could just work with Baker, but then once Freddie was kind of like the head coach, I think that's when Baker started like decline, because it was like, oh well, like I'm not spending as much time with this dude. So yeah, it's definitely interesting to see those dynamics and how they work when people move around and switch.
So, what are you looking at when you look at the schedule?
Mhm.
What are you looking at for projection this year? I mean, it obviously a lot of it, is based on the health of Baker. But what realistically do you see as a win projection for the year?
So there's a couple other games left on the schedule where I feel like the Bengals, as good as they're playing, I think we can still take them 2 games. We have like the Lions, the Patriots, I think the Texans, the Raiders. I'm gonna go out on a whim here. I'm gonna say I think we can still win like 10, 11 games this year. I'm still gonna say like 10, 11 games because we're already 5. Yeah, I think we'll get a win this Sunday against the Steelers. So yeah, I don't think 10, 11, maybe 12 wins is too far out of the realm of possibility.
And yeah, it's so interesting with the 17 games now. Like thinking, would that get them a home playoff game, and would that be important? Would they need that?
I think they would, yeah. I mean, even though they went to Pittsburgh last year and did what they did, I mean, shocked the world. But
Mhm.
yeah, I feel like the people of Cleveland, like they definitely need to have a game up there. I think that'd be special for them. And I think that gives the Browns even a reason to play harder. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, kind of speaking about that too, like what would I mean, you're from the area. What
yeah.
would a Super Bowl run mean to the fan base?
I think so many people would like cry and just like be thrilled about that because like I mean you saw how the people reacted in Cleveland when the Cavs won. So I mean, and Cleveland's a football city, so I mean just imagine what it would be like if the Browns won. I'm pretty sure Cleveland probably burned to the ground.
Well, I'm actually originally from Iowa, and I'm a Cubs fan.
Oh,
So, 2016, I still get a little teary eyed watching some of those videos. So,
yeah, for places like that that have like droughts. I mean, if you go to like LA, Boston, whatever, that always win, like you're used to it. But yeah, it means a lot more when you're from an area who hasn't always had the success or it's been a while. I mean, yeah, I totally get what you. I totally get you.
absolutely. And kind of looking to 2022, what are some needs that you kind of see on the roster for the draft?
I know we talked about quarterbacks. I'm kind of curious actually to see like how the rest of the year plays out, like with the quarterback position, because I feel like we're good at receiver, we're good at running back, offensive line is solid. They went and drafted the rookie, like I said, out of Notre Dame on defense for linebacker, because I feel like linebacker was a problem we always had. The secondary, I feel like just needs to get healthy. Other than that, I think you can kind of see who's out there with that, weigh your options for secondary players. The defensive line, I mean, like I said, they're already pretty solid. Just stay healthy. So, quarterback and cornerback would kind of be the two positions. I'd be interesting to see like how the rest of this year plays out for them.
Talking about that, Baker, it's been interesting to kind of hear him, he wants to play,
Yeah,
and that could maybe work against him, long term.
I think so too.
And so, if it plays out, if he, is semi-injured, plays out, team does well in the playoff or gets to the playoffs, maybe loses a game,
Mhm.
you think they would evaluate and move on from him as opposed to give him a contract?
I feel like they would evaluate him, because I feel like it would be one of those things where it's like, hey, we got here before. Like, are you going to actually get us to the next step? So yeah, I mean that's an interesting point. I'd be really curious to see how that whole bit would play out, because it's like, okay, you're winning games, you're getting us here, but like, are you the one? Do we want to pay you to only get like to the AFC like divisional round or the wild card? Like, do we want to pay you this much money to do that? Like, I don't know. It would just be interesting to see like where he takes them this year, because I think, like I said, this is the make or break year, I think, for him.
Yeah, and I don't know, what kind of Cleveland, sports talk radio thing is like. I mean, I listen to Chicago all the time, and it's brutal.
Yeah,
You
that could be
know,
brutal.
um, are- is everyone kind of, ready to move on, or I mean, what would that be like if they went ahead and drafted a quarterback?
I feel like it's a very mixed bag with him. I feel like there's not really like an in between. I feel like, hey, it's like we hate this guy or we love this guy. And I think the people who love him, like his attitude and just how like confident he is, plays a big part in it. Um, I think people who are like longtime Cleveland fans are like, hey, look, like we have some stability now, like a quarterback. Like, let's not move on from this guy. But other people, I feel like the people who don't like him are cool with him staying there. But the people who do like him, if they moved on, like it'd be a problem. I feel like it's very like one way or the other with him. I think it really just depends on who you get, who you look at. Like I said, Cam Newton. I feel like if it's you move on from Baker to Cam Newton, I don't think people would have too much of a problem with that. But if it's like Baker to like some unproven rookie, like whatever, I don't think people would like really take too kindly to that.
Well, yeah, I mean, you kind of look, if they went with Newton, that might be a couple years,
Yeah,
kind of gap, and that maybe that's what they would need. I mean, you got a solid team, you get a veteran like that, and it would be nice to see Cam Newton get another shot and see him have some success. And not really sure it was a really good fit in New England at all. And
yeah, I don't really think it was either. Like I said, he didn't really have a lot of weapons or anything around him.
mhm.
I mean, like once he's gone, then they go out and get all these other guys, and I'm just like, where were these people when? I don't know. I think their situation could have been a lot different if they're going out and got people sooner. But yeah, I mean, I'd like to have Cam. I wouldn't complain. So
Right.
yeah.
Now, what is the difference? You have been there through Johnny Manziel. And I hate to kind of keep going back to Baker, but what's the difference between Baker and him?
I think Baker like stays sober. Other than
Mhm.
that, I don't really know like if they have. I think the confidence is there. I know a lot of people say it's cockiness. Others say it's just like he's confident. So I don't really know. I feel like their attitudes are kind of a lot similar. But I think Baker's proven himself more than Johnny Manziel has. I think Johnny Manziel was a decent. I think he was a solid pro, but both were great college players. But I think Baker might be a slight better pro quarterback than Johnny, and like I said, he can stay out of trouble outside of football. So, I mean, like I said, he's your quarterback. I mean, maturity is always a big thing. So if he's just cocky, I think you can deal with that a little bit more than like, I don't know, you doing drugs and whatever Johnny Manziel like doing.
Yeah. Yeah, I
So
agree. And that's what you want out of, your quarterback. You want them to, be the leader, but, obviously you want them to have a little bit of an edge.
right, yeah, exactly.
So kind of going forward, uh, with the you see the Browns long term being better than the Bengals.
Oh, that's tough.
Yeah.
Yes, because I feel like the Browns defense is a little bit younger than the Bengals. The Bengals have good defensive players, but they're honestly like all kind of older guys, which I
Hmm.
think is good to have the experience. But yeah, long term, I would think the Browns would be a little bit better. I think the Browns have a better run game too. Also,
Hmm.
um, yeah, team for team, I would say the Browns by a slight edge. I don't think as much, but I would say the Browns right now.
Is that one of the biggest rivalries or for the Browns, or is it the another team?
It's probably the biggest, right? It's probably like the
Yeah.
biggest. People get up for the Steelers games, but the
Hmm.
Bengals will really get up for those. So
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
Well, this has been fantastic. I definitely appreciate you coming on, and so everyone can find you on Twitter, right?
Yes, sir. Yep. Twitter, at Cantly Elliott is my page, and then at Blaze Review Inc. is our other page. So I appreciate you having me on here. This is a good time.
Absolutely. And go ahead and you can plug. You have some other things coming out as well.
Yeah, there's a couple other things I'm working on. I'm actually working on a corporate project right now for
Awesome.
Sinclair Broadcast Group. So we're starting that here coming up soon. And we still just doing our podcast for music, movies, sports, all that good stuff. So we always have something for everybody.
Yeah, I was looking. It definitely got with like some different horror movies and things like that, right?
I'm a big scary movie guy, so this is like my
Nice.
favorite time right now. And tomorrow I'm going to try to check out all the college football games and everything. Big weekend for that, so it'll be fun this weekend. I'm really excited.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, and we'll definitely connect with you on Twitter, and definitely appreciate you coming on.
Yes, sir. Sounds good. Anytime. And like I said, I'd love to have you on our podcast sometime too.
Definitely.
Yes, sir.
Well, once again, it's been NFL Outdated Cover 2 series on the Cleveland Browns, and definitely follow Cantly everywhere you can find him online. Thanks again.
Yes, sir. Thank you.